Let me tell you something that no one told me when I first started sewing. It's that sewing clothes is actually two skills. It's sewing and it's fitting. And unfortunately, you need to learn both. And that is the point of this video today. I am going to go through with you all of the hard earned knowledge that I have come to about sewing and fitting your first clothing, your first garments that you're making, the things that I wish someone told me, because you only learn it when someone tells you. Some of them are obvious, but you don't know until you know. And I'm here to let you know. These are important things that you need to know that aren't in sewing tutorials. They're not on pattern instructions, but you need to do these things so that you get really good results. They're the hidden things that you need to do, both related to sewing up your garments and then fitting, because once you sew it together, you realize it doesn't fit. And where does your sewing journey go from there? I want to impart with you all the hidden knowledge so that you can sew and fit clothes that you dream of and continue your learning path, your sewing journey with ease and a lot faster than I did. Welcome back, my dear sewing friends. It's wonderful to have you back. This is video 5. If we're actually just meeting. My name's Evelyn Wood. I'm the creator of VintageSewingSchool.com, and back here on YouTube at the moment, we are doing a series, Learn to Sew in 30 Days or Less. You can absolutely do it or less. And this is video number 5. So the idea is that I've taken it down, the Learn to Sew process, into different stages, categories, or areas that you need to focus on, and they build in order from each other. So if you haven't seen number 1 to 4 yet, I recommend that you go there, because we start with your sewing machine and getting set up and your needles and threads and all that sort of stuff. Then we move on to the tools and equipment, your scissors, your irons, your everything else that you need as well. Then we worked into video 3 with fabric. So learning about fabric, drape, structure, how to buy it, how to know what it will be like, all of that is in there. And then video number 4 dealt with the pattern. So we went over all the pattern, the markings, how to read it, and very importantly, how to pick your size. And now we arrive here. You're ready to start sewing up and making your first garments. And this video is going to encapsulate all of my, I like to call it, wiser wisdom of years of sewing that I'm compiling, that's not included in most tutorials or sewing instructions, and it's not really anywhere, but it's the most useful practical tips to help you start sewing and fitting the clothes that you absolutely dream of. If you haven't already, go and subscribe to the channel, because I'd love for you to see more of this coming up. Let's talk about the difference between sewing and fitting. So it's not that sewing is 2 skills, it's that sewing clothes is 2 skills. So knowing this actually helped me learn to what to focus on when I was making something up, like what to focus on learning or doing well, because you can't do everything all at once. So sewing is using your machine, using the pattern, marking your notches, having it turn out right, sewing in your zip, getting those gathers right. All that stuff is sewing related stuff. But then it's a garment. It's a 3D object that we put on our bodies, and it has to fit us the way that we like it. And that is a totally different thing to sewing. And so fitting is more skills that encompass pattern making skills, understanding patterns and stitch lines and seam marks and flow through, and being able to pivot darts and knowing, pulling out fullness here and looking at wrinkles and thinking, where will I make those changes on the pattern? And that's a whole other skill, as you're learning already. A skill that is for further down the track that you evolve into, right? You don't start off fitting your clothes, you just start off sewing them, and then you learn and you keep going and you fit them better and better and better. And kind of having that mindset made me realize to just focus on sewing first. And then once I got that sort of okay, then I could start looking at picking the best size first. And I go, all right, get better at that. Then you move on to looking at fitting and doing fitting type exercises. And we'll talk more about what those are in a minute. So one thing I wish I knew more about was seam finishes. Every pattern, if you're lucky, will tell you to maybe finish a seam. Then you have to find out what finishing a seam means, right? And we've talked about that in our previous videos. But no one really talked about doing different types of seam finishes for different reasons, for different looks, for different aesthetics, for different fabrics. And it's something I had to learn on my own, and still now I continue to learn about what looks best. It's the single number one easiest thing that you can do to modify any pattern not really even modify the pattern, but modify the way that it's sewn up to customize it to your own way that you want it to look. Because maybe you don't want all of that overlocking stitch all visible or the zigzagging stitch visible. You want to hide it underneath a French seam or a felled seam, or do a beautiful Hong Kong binding with a contrast ribbon on it. Examples, right? So there are lots of seam finishes that you can do. Some of them are Hong Kong binding or bound seam. You could do French seams where it's all the insides, all the raw edges are encased inside and looks really nice and neat. You could do felled seams by machine or by hand. You can even do simple turn and stitch seam allowances. And I've made other videos on how to do different ones of these, and they're absolutely avenues for you to go and look at, because that's the point. You can do different ones, and it's the easiest thing you can do to customize it. I wish someone had really brought that to my attention early on, because honestly, I don't really like the look of overlocking or serging inside all of my garments, and you probably don't either. Just to take us back to lesson number 1 here, episode number 1, we talked about the golden rule. So remember this. What is it I hear you say? That's right. The golden rule is that you sew a seam, you finish it, you press it, and then you move on. That is the sort of hidden instructions within the instructions when they just say sew the seam, insert the golden rule. That's what they actually mean, right? And on that note, I wish I knew more about pressing or how important it actually is, because, when you know, right? When you press something well, or you get better at pressing, your garment just looks at least 10 times better just when you press it. You don't have to get better at sewing, so you don't have to learn how to do that zip better or, get the zigzags. Your stitching is still the same, but you press it well and it looks so much better. So took me a while to realize this, but when I did, of course I never go back, and I press everything. You've got steam, you've got your little hams and sausages that help you with the pressing process, pressing cloths. All these things are super important. I even recommend that you upgrade your iron before you even upgrade your machine. So you get a nice iron that steams well, that doesn't spit water everywhere. It's nice and clean. It gives you a nice clean finish, and something that's really, you just like working with. Because when you like it ironing more, you're going to do it more, right? So just don't skip this step just because you don't see the importance. I wish it was drilled into me. And hopefully I'm imparting that knowledge to you now, that you don't skip that step either. Let's talk about testing. So there's 2 forms of testing here. Testing sewing and testing toiles and mock-ups and things. And we're going to get to all of that. So I wish I knew that I could actually do a zip on a practice piece of fabric first, or a practice skirt, or practice anything, before I did it on my real fashion fabric. I had no idea until I realized that. It's one of those super obvious points that of course you can do that. And I see this in my students all the time at Vintage Sewing School. So that's why I'm mentioning it here, because it's not obvious. It's only obvious when you know. Of course I could do a practice one. Why would I do the very first zip, for example, on my garment that I'm planning to wear? That is a recipe for disaster. So you want to be testing just your stitches in general. Do they work on the fabric that you're going to sew? Test your seam finishes. Does it work on the fabric? Do a sample zip, do a test hem, do a test your interfacing especially, and make sure it works before you do it on your real garment. You do it once, like the second time you do it, it doesn't even weigh up. And that's where I come into the next one, is testing via a mock-up, a toile, a muslin. What is this? You've probably heard this term before. All of these are the same thing. It means a test garment, a prototype, a mock-up of your garment that you're going to make. So you very often do it in a cheaper fabric, maybe don't even do the finishing hems or things like that. And it's meant to, in industry, they do it to sort of test the fit more. So it's made out of calico, muslin, or a similar like-for-like fabric, so it falls and drapes about the same. And it's made so that you can test the fit. Change the design line here, make it fit a little bit differently here, change the length here, before you cut it out of your expensive fashion fabric. But I know you're thinking, I don't know how to do any of that yet, and that's beyond me. And that is absolutely, you're right. What you do your toile or mock-up for at this stage when you're just starting is to practice and test sewing everything up. It is a brilliant way to do your zip, do your hem, do your neckline, do your facing, do all your things on your garment, and do it as a test run because then when you do it on your real fashion fabric, right, your real one, oh my gosh, the second time you do it, you think it'll be twice as good. It's not. It's at least 10 times better than the first time you did it. I know the math doesn't add up like that way, but it is. It's just like magic math, at least 10 times better. And then when you do get to that stage, definitely do your trials and mock-ups to test your fit so that you can do practice and test your pattern and see how it fits you to make all those changes. Which brings us to moving into the fitting portion here. I really didn't know the difference between size and fit, and that they're two different things. We talked about this in previous videos, but let's just recap. Size is what we pick from the pattern envelope, and we pick our best starting size. And I say starting size for a reason. Size is when we go up or down in the pattern in the same proportions, the same scale, right? It just goes up or down, the same shape, the same everything. Fitting is where we start to mold and shape and tweak and create a different shape. The proportions change because we fit it and mold it to our own unique bodies. And when I sort of started to, in my mind, separate those two, it made the process so much easier. So I would pick the best starting size first and do that and make sure I get that, because that gives you the base, the best starting point to then move to fitting, which is later. And so I think separating those two different jobs in your mind really helps you know where to focus your attention on. Do you need a better starting size first so you can focus and work on that? Or are you at the fit stage and it's time to start working on learning how to fit this pattern to you, and you look at that area and go there. Making the same garment twice. This is very, very, very wise information that no one told me, that again is very obvious, but it's only when you know, you're like, well, obviously. But again, I see it and hear it from my students. They're like, of course I should do that. Oh, why didn't I think of that? So we're here having this conversation. It's okay, and you should, in fact, make the same garment twice if you want to get better results. We just talked about this, right? The second time you make something, it's 10 times better. And generally, you're here because you want to learn how to sew well. And so when you make something, I know you've taken your lessons. You know what to make from that first project that you did. Made a mental note, or even better, wrote them all down. All the things that you would do differently next time when you do it. So logically, just do all those same things again on your second version and it is going to be way better. So I really do recommend that you make the same garment twice. You do use a different fabric, it's going to look different and it will just look so much better, and you get to really cement those skills that you're learning rather than just going to a different thing here, different thing here, different thing here, different thing here, and never really kind of cementing and solidifying the things that you've learned and sort of building a ladder of skills, upon the others, because sewing is that you start with your basics, right? And you build one skill and you bring it in. You get another skill and you bring it into your little skill bucket over here, and then you get another one, you bring it in, and your bucket gets bigger and bigger every time, right? Your little bubble here. Do you like that little analogy of my skill bubble there? Okay, so let's talk a couple of shortcuts to help you through this fitting process. So number one, make the same garment twice, because then you can keep making new versions of the same one. Well, fitting takes time. It takes a really long time to learn, and you probably find you learn to sew quite quickly, and then you get to here, and then you're in fitting, and you will spend the whole rest of your sewing journey in here just getting better and better and better at fitting. I'm not ever finished learning. There's always more to learn, and you never get to a point where you're like, I know everything. It doesn't happen. So you're just forever mastering this skill. So knowing that helped me realize that there's no end point. I'm not doing bad. I'm just always going to be doing better and better and better, and that is the point. And so how do we use this to our advantage? Well, the way industry does it is they start with what's called a block pattern. And so it's a kind of basic block, be it a basic t-shirt, a basic A-line skirt, a basic shift dress, whatever you like, right? The basic style of a certain silhouette or style of garment. And what they do is once they perfect that, then they just make different versions of that same thing. They might add a different sleeve, change the neckline shape, add buttons instead of a zipper. They might change the length. They might change the skirt shape on the dress, right? I think you see what I'm talking about. You've seen this in stores, and you've definitely seen this on sewing patterns where they have the same style essentially, but different versions. One's got sleeves, one's shorter, one's longer. You can absolutely learn how to do that yourself. And that is what I recommend as the shortcut to kind of having to fit. So once you fit your basic block right, your lovely standard dress that you love to wear, for example, right? The good news is that we usually like to wear the same type of fitting garment over and over, right? We like it because it's the fit that we like. So we use that to our advantage. Or the same pant fit, right? You like that same cut, that same fit. Use that to advantage. When you do all the work in trying to fit it once and start with a basic sort of one of the style that you like, do all the work. It'll take forever and ever and ever and a day and a half. Forever and a day and a half. And then once you do fit it, you just make new versions of it, right? If it's a pants, maybe the waist is higher or lower, different size waistband, belt loops, no belt loops, all the different kinds of pockets that you can add, turn them into shorts, maybe taper the leg for one thing. Change tops, change the neckline, add the buttons, learn how to put different sleeves on, right? So you can keep mixing and matching, and that way you get to make the same thing multiple times, but it's a little bit different each time, and you don't have to refitting it, because fitting is the real hard thing. Learning the principles of pattern making and foundations throughout learning that skill, and then you can just use that to maybe change and tailor your pattern. That is my little shortcut that I think is the like golden nugget of like where you headed. So it gives you the vision down the road of maybe where I like to head and where I teach my students to go, where I find the most success in doing, like, getting the most value out of your precious sewing time. Or I should say sewing and fitting time, because there's two skills, remember. Every time I think, oh, I've mastered this, there's always another level that I can take things to. And I guess that's the whole point that I'm trying to impart here to you, in that don't be so hard on yourself. Learning to sew takes a long time, especially when you get to this stage, because you think, I should be doing better. You learnt all this stuff, right? Videos 1 to 4 quite quickly, and then this is like, oh boy, right? Give yourself some grace. It takes time, and there's no end. You will keep learning and keep building your skills from here in sewing and fitting your first and last and second, and there's no end, right? If you want the workbook version of this whole series, and of course today's lesson, it is for YouTube members, for a part of our Sew Club. We've got that there for you. There's also extended videos and things like all the fun stuff there. It's a little like behind the scenes area for those that want a little bit more of what we do here on YouTube. We've just launched that this year, so I'm super excited for you to join that. All the links are down there. You can just click the join button to find out how to do that. And of course, I want to hear from you down below. Tell me, how is your Learn to Sew journey? I would love to hear more about your experience, what you struggled with, what was hard, what you've mastered, what you like to learn more of, because this is what I do here on YouTube. And so this is where I get my ideas from, is you. So put those down there and I might just make a video about it. I'm so excited for your sewing journey ahead. And until next time, my sewing friends, happy sewing. Bye.